Hello and welcome to the Spooky Shack. My name is Gibby and this is the FNAF Community Update. This is the show where I'm going to answer some questions from my comment sections and then at the end possibly recommend a video for you guys to watch. This is full spoilers for the FNAF 2 movie. Let's begin. Who the best for your opinion? You don't like the movie, that's fine, but keep your opinions to yourself, thanks. Good start. I genuinely don't know how to respond to this. I guess there's two ways to do it, right? The first would be that who asked us to do this would be the combined over 200,000 subscribers that T-Dreads, Unwithered Truth, and myself have. But I think the more correct answer would be that it doesn't matter if we only had a couple subscribers. Having people discuss their opinions on art is incredibly important, especially in a community like Five Nights at Freddy's, which is both niche and popular. So the idea of having smaller voices speak up about the things that they notice in the franchise is more important than in in something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe where you have thousands, hundreds of thousands of people spewing their opinions everywhere. The idea of hardcore FNAF fans, if they have a platform or not, talking about the movie is important to the further development of the franchise. If we had 10 subs, it would be good and important that we talk about it on the internet. But we don't have 10 subs, we have over 200,000 combined subscribers, and they are the ones who asked. I blocked this person's name because they're rude. Don't harass them if you find this comment, please. You guys thought about William washing his hands more than everyone on set combined. I don't think that's really a fair criticism of the movie. While I do not like that scene, and we talked about it at length in our discussion and review and analysis of the movie, I think that it's less likely that there's no reason and more likely that there is a reason that was not coherently conveyed on film. I think that was more of a what you convey to the audience problem than a this character's actions don't make sense problem. So I do think that if we were to ask Scott what the answer was, he would have one as to why did William just knock this boy out and is now washing his hands, allowing Charlie to sneak up and save the boy. I think Scott knows, even if we, the audience, don't know. I like this comment. In my 36-hour-long FNAF video about the books, I mentioned how you should watch Mean Girls before proceeding to listen to Be Beautiful, and this person live reacted to their first viewing of Mean Girls, and I just really like that. One of the other problems that people had with our discussion of the FNAF movie was us criticizing the fact that the puppet holding up Charlie right after she dies resembles La Pieta, which is a very famous statue and other times in other mediums of art depiction of Mary carrying Jesus's body. And we criticized this by saying that if you're going to evoke this imagery, which it obviously is doing, you cannot tell me that the people who filmed this movie did not know that that's what people would think of. And so the criticism is, if you're going to use that imagery, it needs to mean something. The fact that Charlie is neither a Christ figure nor a failed Christ figure, the way that like Anakin Skywalker is, right? The fact that this symbol doesn't mean anything, it just kind of looks cool, or is an accident, is a problem with the movie making. It's conveying something to the audience that is not followed up on. So either it should have been changed because it wasn't intentional, or, in my opinion, I think it was only part of the movie because Scott wanted to literally show the puppet lifting Charlie into its arms to mirror the thing that Henry said in FNAF 6, and then thought, oh, it looks cool, maybe it's Jesus? Which I think detracts from the movie and is bad. We received quite a few comments, including 2 on my own video, which are going to be the ones that I highlight, where people are wrong. Can we say the imagery is inverted, meaning the symbolism behind that is also inverted? The character acts in the literal opposite way of what you would think happened if you know that piece of art. Did you also notice it's an inversion then? The art reference is flipped in the film. No, it's not. There are countless versions of La Pieta, the imagery of Mary carrying Jesus, and the direction Jesus is facing has no correlation to the meaning of the statue. It is always random. So no, Scott didn't say, oh, the most famous one he's facing left, so we'll have Charlie facing right to show that it's anti-Jesus. I don't think the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender were doing this pose to show that Aang is the Antichrist. So I get this analysis of art, but it's just wrong because there is no one version of the statue. One of the other scenes that we criticized was when Mike and Vanessa are first talking outside of Mike's house. So Vanessa comes over to talk to Mike to tell him about her dream. She runs into Abby. She sees that Abby has been drawing pictures of the river at the original Freddy's location. She goes to Mike to tell him, like, hey, it's kind of concerning. Abby said that she was talking to Freddy recently. Maybe she's been sneaking out. And Mike is like, it's kind of annoying that you're, coming around here. I'm trying to fix you, but now you're talking nonsense. I'm just trying to put my family together. And then Vanessa's like, oh, you're trying to fix me? Now I'm mad and I'm not going to tell you this thing about your sister possibly being in danger, and she storms off. And I criticized this scene because it really feels like the dialogue was just taken in order to get across the character's feelings. It's literally Mike saying, I am so stressed out by what is happening. It's just one thing after another, which means nothing in the movie. The phrase he uses, it's just one thing after another, tells us, like, it's like Scott needed to put something there to show that Mike is frustrated, and so used a phrase that means I'm frustrated, but we have no idea what he's talking about. And so I criticized that scene, saying that it's literally just characters stating their emotions back and forth. And so this person says, the scene was just them stating their emotions back and forth. Well, yeah, dude. The movie is about Mike, Abby, and Vanessa dealing with their trauma from the first movie and having no idea how to move on. The entire town is dealing with the consequences of William Afton's crimes and abuse. Why do you not understand this? Gibby, usually you understand what Scott is going for. Scott can be going for conveying to us that these characters are having, very complicated emotions that they have a difficulty discussing and verbalizing and articulating. That's not the criticism. The criticism is not that these characters are traumatized. The criticism is that the dialogue is bad.
You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry.
You're missing the forest for the trees here.
How can I move forward when it's one thing after another?
My father was a monster, you know that.
A couple days ago, I uploaded a video on my main channel where I teach FNAF lore to YouTuber JJ McCullough. We talked a couple times in the past, and he reached out to me because he wanted to learn Five Nights at Freddy's lore. And so I created a PowerPoint presentation that I thought would only take an hour and ended up being almost 4. And in that video, we discussed the minigames in FNAF 6. Something that I thought I would only gloss over because they're so, confusing. I also didn't touch on Candy Cadet because, again, that was sort of outside the scope of the video. So I only touched on Security Puppet, Fruity Maze, and Midnight Motorist a little bit. I started the Midnight Motorist section saying that it's a complicated minigame that nobody understands, and then I walked through an objective description of what happens throughout the game. JJ's immediate takeaway was my same takeaway, that Orange Guy is not William. I did not lead him to this conclusion. I did not prompt him to believe this. I personally was kind of surprised that he said this. But this created a new host of Midnight Motorist comments in my comment section. Most of these questions, are things I've answered before. And so I keep asking myself, what do I do? How do I respond to common questions that I've answered like a dozen times? Do I keep answering them because obviously there are people who didn't hear the answer the first 12 times? Or do I just ignore them because the answer's out there if they bother to look? I don't know, but either way, we're now going to move on to Midnight Motorist discourse. Okay, can someone clear this up for me? The car in Later That Night isn't purple. Why does everyone say it is? The car is obviously gray. Why does everyone say it's purple? I don't know how to tell you this, but I think you're colorblind. The thing about Midnight Motorist not being William is, if William was leaving to kidnap the children he's going to kill, how would those children have been associated with the others? This is actually one of the pieces of evidence that makes me believe most strongly that Orange Guy is not William. My theory for Midnight Motorist is that Orange Guy is the father of one of the MCI victims. He's orange because it's the opposite on the color wheel from William, who's purple, so the killer is purple, the grieving parents are orange. He is drunk driving home, he is an abusive father, he goes to check on his kid is not there, the kid saw Spring Bonnie out the window, he breaks out of his window to go to Freddy's. The reason I believe this so strongly is because the last line of the minigame is Orange Guy saying, he's gone to that place again, he will be sorry when he gets back. There's no reason for Scott to include this if this is William. There's no reason for Scott to include this line of dialogue, because it doesn't tell us anything beyond where the father thinks the kid is going. Like, if this is William, what is that place again? We don't know. To this day, no one can agree if that place is Freddy's, or if it's the mound in the woods, if it's a grave. Scott put this in the game to answer this question that you're having. The town, the police, know that this disappearance is tied to Freddy's, because the father thinks he's going to Freddy's. His son is off to that place again. He will be sorry when he gets back. We, the audience, know the kid will not come back because he's been murdered. That makes this line dramatic irony. It also explains how the police know that this disappearance is tied to Freddy's. In FNAF 1, the newspaper that tells us about the MCI says that last night 2 kids were lured to the back, and then another newspaper says this has now been tied to 3 other disappearances associated with Freddy's. So those other disappearances associated with Freddy's would have happened on different nights, so the MCI was not one day. and they're only associated with Freddy's. It does not say that they were disappeared from inside of Freddy's. So Scott has intended from FNAF 1 for some of the disappearances to take place outside the restaurant, and this is him showing that, and it's also him showing how the police were able to tie those disappearances that took place outside the restaurant to Freddy's, because Orange Guy, the abusive father of one of the MCI victims, knew his son was going there because that's where he always goes. He's gone to that place again. This is actually how we know Orange Guy is not William. Great video, didn't pay attention. The MCI were killed at Freddy's. We have no reason to believe William was leading children out of their homes in costumes. Again, that is just factually wrong. The newspapers in FNAF 1 tell us that he was doing that. Not to mention, it is raining. I, to this day, do not understand how people keep getting hung up on this. For one, we've now seen multiple instances throughout the series of Springlot suits that don't get affected by water in the movie and in the Secret of the Mimic. People can say that this is a retcon, but I think it's Scott clarifying that the reason that moisture negatively affected the Springlot suits in FNAF 3 is because they were old. In Secret of the Mimic, Edwin originally has problems with moisture, right? Someone spills soda on their suit and it almost takes their arm off, and then created waterproof Springlock suits. We have now also learned from the movie that the toys and the withered animatronics are also Springlock suits. The other very obvious answer to this question is that it was not raining while the kid was being abducted. I don't know why people think it was. It was not raining during the Midnight Motorist portion of the minigame. It only starts raining during later that night. This is such a non-issue, I don't know why it keeps coming up. Plus, Toy Chica's high school years doesn't correlate to any MCI deaths or other minigames whatsoever. This is just factually wrong, so I can see people taking issue with me saying that Toy Chica's high school years describes the events of Midnight Motorist. On the surface it does, where Chica says that she'll go to someone's house and she'll break a window. But then she proceeds to say that, oh, if they still don't come out, she'll crawl down the chimney. And that's not what we see in Midnight Motorist, so I totally get why people say that those aren't correlated one-to-one.
I'll just go to his house. And if he doesn't open the door, I'll just find a window. Chimney's always an option. Or I could set the house on fire and wait for him to run out.
But it's factually wrong to say that none of Toy Chica's statements correlate with minigames or the MCI, because one of them is very obviously about Susie.
I told him that someone ran over his dog in front of my house. But once he's there, I'll entice him with warm cookies, lure him inside, invite him inside, and then I'll have him.
So if one of the Toy Chica's high school years statements is about the MCI, why wouldn't the other ones be? And if one of them then sounds kind of like Midnight Motorist, it really seems like Midnight Motorist is one of the MCI kids disappearing. So, we've no reason to believe William was leading children out of their homes in their costumes. We know this because of Midnight Motorist. The assumption that he did not do that, and thus we can't fit in Midnight Motorist to the evidence, is called begging the question, or circular logic. You're taking the idea that you know the conclusion, and thus when evidence comes up that doesn't fit your conclusion, you dismiss it. What you need to do is look at the evidence and build a conclusion from it. Because of Midnight Motorist, if we go in without the assumption that we know what everything is, if we go in without the assumption that Orange Guy is William, we can see that it's evidence explaining how one of the kids got kidnapped, and thus actually lines up with the newspaper in FNAF 1. One of the other things we talk about in FNAF is the retcon. Scott mentioned around the release of Sister Location that there was something that was retconned in the first couple games. It was a seamless retcon that not a lot of people noticed, and to this day we still don't know what he's talking about. This is one of those questions or comments that I keep getting, and so I don't know how to respond to them, because if people keep bringing it up, it's going to get very repetitive. But they say, the retcon is Scott changing the gender of the first murder victim. Charlotte, Henry's daughter, is killed outside of Freddy's in the minigame that depicts the murder. Save him is spelled out. Charlotte is a girl, that's the retcon. No. Charlotte was not a girl until FNAF 6. Scott told us there was a seamless retcon in FNAF 5. This is a widely believed piece of misinformation. The retcon cannot be Charlie's gender, because we did not know Charlie was a girl until after Scott made that statement. And finally, love the theory that includes FNAF World so strongly. I hate that it's so dismissed as a whole. I agree, I love FNAF World, and this got me thinking a lot about the game, and so what I've done is I couldn't get it out of my head, and so I typed up a little thing I want to say about FNAF World. When I was talking to JJ McCullough about FNAF, I had a real hard time talking about FNAF World and struggling to explain what it is, because JJ was familiar with the concept. He knew that Scott Cawthan created RPG games in the past and that he made a Five Nights at Freddy's RPG. But how it fit in with the FNAF 4 story is pretty difficult to understand to an outsider. For me to tell him, oh, this weird RPG cutesy game that has Scott himself as a boss is tied into FNAF 4. because it literally quotes FNAF 4, and there's a cutscene in the beginning and a cutscene at the end that tie into directly what's happened in that game. But also, Scott is himself a literal boss in the game, is confusing. Theorists have distilled the important parts of the game into a sort of category of important things to know. So the opening cutscene, the closing cutscene, and most of Glitch Bear's dialogue are things that someone should know if they're trying to learn about the series between the events of FNAF 4 and FNAF 5. And everything else is just not canon. You have Deskman and Old Man Consequences, who are sort of in between these things, depending on how you choose to interpret what they are. But the point is that we've gone, oh, this weird sea monster, that's not canon. But Glitch Bear, he is. And the community is kind of written off those things as not important and those things as important. And we just go, it's like that because of the way it is. But to tell an outsider, oh, this line of dialogue is canon, but the rest of the game isn't. And then they ask why, and we don't really have an answer for that. It kind of showed me that the things that are cemented in the community's understanding of the game might not be accurate. This is one of the reasons I always say that outside voices, like potentially a YouTube channel that only has like a couple subscribers talk about the FNAF movie, are important, because they can point at something that we all agree on, we all think we understand, and go, why is it like that? And then we all go, oh, I don't know actually, maybe we should re-examine FNAF World. Although I do also feel like everyone continually re-examines FNAF World trying to understand it, which is why I'm going to conclude here with my overall point, which is, Scott Cawthan, make FNAF World 2. I know you were scared by the reception of the game. I know that you don't like it and you look back on it in shame. But I think, and you said that you regret tying it into a canon game, I think you need to go the full other direction. FNAF World 2 needs to be completely crazy and also be extremely lore relevant, but only in little bits and pieces, so that people understand that the non-canon games can still dish out lore. You need to do that. You need to steer into it, Scott. We need FNAF World 2. And now that you're done making the movie, I think it's a pretty good time to maybe work on a little project. Maybe like make a little RPG game? Make a little RPG game? FNAF World 2. This week, I want to shout out Nara Raven's video, The Security Breach Timeline is Not What You Think. Him and Underscore go over a lot of pieces of information that I haven't seen people talk about. I actually didn't know quite a few of these until we were talking about them in our group chat before he released the video, that I think really explain a lot of Security Breach. There's a big ask in the video. The video presents you with a piece of information, and it basically goes, you're either going to agree with this, or you're not going to agree with it. If you agree with it, we can move forward with our timeline. If not, I get it. And so I really, really think that you should give that video a watch. Of course, it'll be linked in the description. Thank you for watching. Be sure to be nice to each other in the comments, consider supporting the creators you admire, never lose sight of the things that are important to you. Make sure you like, comment, favorite, and subscribe. Leave questions for next time in the comments below this video, and remember to be Freddy's. Friendly, respectful engagement, discussion, and discourse yield success. We will see you next time.